The evening air was heavy with the smell of rain. I could hear the faint drip of water from the roof gutter, each drop echoing softly in the quiet house. I had been folding laundry in the living room, the soft hum of the heater my only company. Then came the knock. Slow, deliberate, hesitant. I paused, holding the folded shirt in my hands, and felt a tight knot of unease in my chest. It wasn't late for neighbors to return from work, yet the knock carried a weight I couldn't place. I opened the door, and there he stood. Ryan, my son, the boy I had raised with hope and worry, the one who had left years ago. His eyes were the same, dark, searching, vulnerable, but now they carried something I didn't recognize. He was grown, and yet somehow still the child I had once promised I would protect. He whispered my name. It sounded different, heavier, hesitant. I need one last thing, he said. I felt my stomach tighten. I wasn't ready, and yet somehow I already knew that my life was about to change again. Before that night, life had been predictable, though not always easy. I had spent most of my adult life managing our small apartment, working part-time at a local shop, balancing bills and groceries, and quietly shouldering the responsibility of my children alone after my husband passed. The house was modest, with faded curtains and a worn dining table, but it was warm. It smelled faintly of jasmine from the small potted plant near the window and the faint aroma of tea I drank every morning. Ryan had always been restless. Even as a child, he would run to the window during storms, fascinated by the thunder, while his sister remained curled up with a book. He had ideas, big, impossible, sometimes reckless ideas. I admired his ambition, but worried constantly. I worried he would leave, as he eventually did, chasing opportunities in a city I had never visited. His sister, my daughter, was different. She respected routines, rules, and order. She kept the house tidy, remembered birthdays and anniversaries, and rarely forgot a single thing. She had patience, which I admired, though Ryan often teased her for it. It was a family of contrasts, impulsive and thoughtful, loud and quiet, messy and precise. And beneath our calm routines, small tensions. The following week felt endless. Each morning, I awoke to the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in the quiet apartment. I would make tea, carefully measuring the leaves, feeling the warmth seep into my hands, as if the simple act could calm the storm brewing inside me. I checked the mailbox every day, half hoping for another note, half dreading bad news. Some letters were from banks, notices about late payments. Others were silent reminders of promises broken. I kept them in a small drawer, stacking them neatly, not out of hope, but to remind myself of the stakes. Even ordinary tasks carried weight. Cooking became a careful calculation. How many meals could stretch across the week? Should I skip an extra egg today to save for tomorrow? I noticed small things I had never thought about before, the way the kitchen tiles had cracked slightly near the sink, or how the handle of the cupboard wobbled. Every imperfection reminded me that nothing was permanent, that life could shift in a single decision. Neighbors occasionally asked how I was. I smiled, saying, "I'm fine," though my voice was thin and tired. They didn't see the nights I sat by the window, staring at the empty street, whispering his name into the darkness, hoping for answers that would not come. The apartment grew quieter than usual. Even the small ticking of the old wall clock became a companion, counting the hours while I sat alone. Sometimes I would fold laundry slowly, letting my mind wander to memories of Ryan. His childhood laughter, the nights he had sat beside me reading, the small arguments over homework that seemed trivial then, but now felt like lost opportunities. I began to notice my own habits in ways I hadn't before. I would make 2 cups of tea in the morning, one for myself, and pretend I was sharing it with him. I arranged the chairs in the dining room so he could sit across from me, even though he wasn't there. It was a small comfort, a private ritual of hope and memory. At times, tears pricked my eyes, but I never let them fall. I reminded myself that strength was quiet, not loud, and so I endured. I endured for myself, and I endured for the memory of a son I had loved fiercely, even when life had taken him away. Then, one rainy afternoon, a small envelope arrived, soaked at the edges. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It wasn't Ryan's this time, but from an old family friend, a teacher who had guided him during childhood. Inside was a note, delicate and precise. It explained that a small account set aside years ago by my parents had remained untouched. It was modest, but enough to cover some debts, and it had been intended for times of hardship, emergencies, or moments when guidance was needed. Alongside the note was a short letter my late mother had written, carefully folded. Strength is not measured by endurance alone, but by knowing when to accept help and when to stand firm. I sat at the table, envelope in hand, the rain tapping against the window like a soft drum. I realized that I was not powerless. I had tools, I had clarity, I had the ability to act with dignity. For the first time since his absence, I felt a shift within me. I didn't feel anger bubbling uncontrollably, nor despair weighing down my chest. Instead, I felt a steady, quiet strength. I knew that when Ryan returned asking for one last thing, I could respond without panic or resentment. I could respond with calm, with boundaries, and with the dignity that had sustained me all these years. I closed the envelope and let out a slow breath. The storm outside mirrored the storm I had carried, yet I felt a flicker of hope, a seed of control returning to my hands. After discovering the envelope and my late mother's note, I felt a strange clarity settle over me. I had been carrying worry and resentment for years, but now I could see the situation with calm eyes. I began making quiet plans, not in anger, but in careful thought. First, I reviewed all the paperwork at home, bills, receipts, letters from the lender, and notes of Ryan's past decisions. I organized everything into neat folders, one for expenses, one for debts, one for personal correspondence. The act of sorting brought a surprising sense of control. I could see the shape of the problem, which meant I could face it one step at a time. I also reached out to two trusted friends, not for gossip, not for intervention, but for guidance. One was a neighbor who had worked in finance for years. The other was a quiet relative who understood family dynamics. I explained the situation calmly, leaving out no details. Together, we reviewed options, how to address the debts, how to approach Ryan when he returned, and how to maintain my dignity throughout. I reminded myself repeatedly, strength did not mean confrontation or shouting. Strength meant calm, measured action. It meant meeting the storm not with fire, but with steady hands and clear vision. Over the next few days, I began taking small, deliberate steps. I consolidated accounts to ensure transparency. I double-checked which bills were overdue and made arrangements to pay a few immediately. I left small notes in my notebook, reminders for myself. Do not react impulsively. Listen first, decide second. Each small action reinforced a new truth. I was not at the mercy of past mistakes. I could face Ryan calmly without letting emotion cloud judgment. Even at home, I created visual markers of calm. Candles on the table, soft curtains drawn to let gentle sunlight in, a small vase of fresh flowers from the market. These tiny touches reminded me of peace and reflection. I wanted the house to feel steady, a space where I could think clearly and where any conversation could happen without chaos. I spent long evenings reflecting quietly. I imagined Ryan standing at the door asking for that one last thing. I imagined myself responding not with panic, not with accusation, but with calm resolve. I will listen first. I will not allow guilt or fear to guide my words. I recalled all the moments we had shared, the night he read stories to his younger sister, the mornings he ran to the kitchen for toast, the way he laughed, even when frustrated. I allowed myself to feel both love and disappointment at the same time. It was a strange, heavy mix, but it gave me perspective. I realized that accepting his presence now did not mean I had to accept past mistakes blindly. I could offer compassion, yes, but also boundaries. I practiced phrases quietly to myself. I understand your situation, but we can talk, but first let's review the facts. I want to help, but you must take responsibility too. These simple words, yet they carried the weight of years of experience and reflection. I felt ready, not for confrontation and anger, but for a measured, dignified discussion. The knock came softly, but my heart knew it immediately. I had spent days preparing, yet nothing could erase the mix of nerves and anticipation. I opened the door. Ryan stood there, rain-soaked hair clinging to his forehead, eyes wide and unsteady. He looked smaller somehow, not because he had grown less, but because the weight he carried was visible. I noticed the trembling of his hands, the hesitation in his stance. I need one last thing, he said quietly, his voice almost breaking. I gestured for him to come in, stepping aside carefully. I'm listening, I said, my voice calm, steady. He entered, dripping rain onto the mat, avoiding my eyes at first. The house smelled faintly of tea and damp wood, a comfort in the tension. We sat at the table, teacups in front of us. I did not speak immediately. I waited, letting him gather courage, letting him place his words carefully. He fidgeted with his hands, clearing his throat, and finally looked at me. I made mistakes, he began, voice soft. I never meant to hurt you. I need your help to make things right. I listened, truly listened, not interrupting, not judging aloud, just letting him speak. His words were shaky, but sincere. He explained the pressures, the debts, the fear that had made him act hastily. He admitted where he went wrong, where he had been careless. I could feel the emotions rising inside me, old hurt, lingering worry, but I let them pass, like clouds. I replied gently, my tone even. Ryan, I understand that mistakes happen. We all make them. But you must take responsibility and understand the weight of your absence. He nodded. Relief and shame mingled in his eyes. I will. I promise. I don't know where to start. I reached across the table, placing my hand lightly over his. I'll help you, yes, but first, let's make a plan, calmly, step by step. You cannot undo the past in a single night, and neither can I fix everything alone. The simplicity of the conversation surprised both of us. No yelling, no blame, just clarity, love, and responsibility. We began together, listing debts, creating a small repayment plan, and identifying what could be fixed immediately. The burden felt lighter simply because it was no longer carried alone. After hours of talking, we paused. The rain had stopped, leaving faint traces of water on the doorstep and a soft scent of wet earth drifting inside. I looked at Ryan, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight lift slightly. Forgiveness does not erase mistakes. It does not erase consequences, but it allows us to move forward with dignity, understanding, and calm hearts. He left that night with a sense of purpose. I remained at the window, watching him disappear into the quiet street. I felt peace, but also awareness. Boundaries had been set, responsibilities acknowledged, and love remained intact. That night, I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude for clarity, for calm, for strength, for the ability to face a difficult situation without losing myself in anger or despair, and for the hope that with care and patience, our family could begin to heal. Thank you for listening to this emotional, real-life story. If this story touched you or reminded you of someone in your life, like, comment, and subscribe for more calm, heartfelt narratives. Have you ever faced a moment where love and boundaries had to meet?